This sign wasn't too bad because it's small. It came down in one piece, but the large sign, you know, it took up a half a block of Portage Avenue and it came down in sections. So when we did this, we did it in the middle of the night because we would have had to take permits out and stuff with the city to block the sidewalk. So when we went and did this, I think we went at like midnight and worked all night and took them down at night. But I mean, they were really rough when they were on the building. They probably hadn't maintained them in the last, 5 years that they were open, and then I think Clifford's was closed there for at least 5 years before we took the signs down.
Everybody shopped at Clifford's, I think. It wasn't high-end stuff. It was middle to cheaper, I think, wares. But I think probably everyone shopped at Clifford's at one time or another. He bought the store from someone named Clifford, and to his infinite regret for the rest of his life, he never thought to change the name. So he just continued with that name.
I think he just probably came to Canada and met somebody who was doing that sort of thing, suggested he could make money that way as well, and then he went from a suitcase to a car to eventually renting a place, eventually buying a store.
Well, my dad had never planned to be a businessman, right? He was from Russia. He was born just before the revolution. And he was a communist. He was very committed. He was a member of the whatever young communist organization they were. And he assumed when he came to Winnipeg that the revolution was just around the corner. You know, he was just expecting it any day. I don't think my dad had any interest in clothing, women's clothing at all, to tell you the truth. You know, I mean, it was a business for him. He would have buyers. These would be women who worked for him that he would realize had good taste, and they would do a lot of the buying, you know. So he had hundreds and hundreds of contacts he was on the phone with all the time. 4 times a year, there were four sales a year, and the whole rhythm of the family kind of circled around those. I often felt it was like being a farmer, you know, really dependent on the seasons, and of course, the weather made a big difference. If you had a cool summer, that would affect the kind of selling you were doing, and you had to buy things ahead of time. If you misjudged it, problems. And it really did seem to me, in some ways, really being very tied to the natural cycles, which you really wouldn't normally think of. My father had a store on Selkirk Avenue, which was the kind of main street of the North End. That was his second store, but that was his first Clifford store, and that was very successful. And at some point, he decided he wanted to expand to the Cliffords downtown, and a lot of people advised him against that. It was a big facility, and people didn't think he could make it.
I began to work as a sales clerk at Clifford's in the downtown store. And I remember the first year I worked there, poodle cloth came in, and it was sort of a knit. It wasn't stretchy like the knits are today. It was a firm but sort of knitted looking fabric, and it was poodly finish. And I fell in love with this robin's egg blue dress. It was so beautiful. I just wanted it. And so I worked for free for weeks and weeks and months in order to buy that dress.
He would get these I'm sure these don't exist anymore, these huge, giant books. I mean, they were just enormous, with millions of pictures. And basically, you would choose the pictures that were closest to the dresses you were selling and cut them out and paste them, do paste ups and all that. I remember as a child being a bit shocked at the idea that these weren't the exact dresses, you know, that he was selling. These were just sort of kind of looked like the dresses, but that was a big family sort of project.
I remember when he was working on the advertisements for the newspaper, the background would be dark and the lettering would be light, and this was his signature. He came up with this idea. I don't think anyone else putting ads in the newspaper did that. That kind of thing, leave an impression.
I never modeled for Cliffords at the beginning. I was always just sales staff. So then during that time when I was modeling, I got a phone call from Cliffords and asked if I would do a TV commercial. Well, I was so excited. They were very prolific. They appeared a lot. You'd be watching a movie at night and that commercial would come on like 6 times through the movie. They always bought time that was probably cost effective, and usually in the evenings where there was a lot of viewership of the target age, which would have been women, you know, between the ages, I'd say, of 18 to 60. And that's when the commercials ran. These commercials primarily were models walking down the stairs in beautiful clothes and being photographed, and of course there was the song, every sha-la-la-la.
I mean, as long as he was on the good side of Portage Avenue, the same side as Eaton's in the Bay, the business was extremely profitable. Once they did those bridges, Clifford's was dead. And, you know, it was enormous. My dad used to point out to me, before the bridges were built, the other side of the street was dead. No one ever went to the other side of the street. And it was really run down and awful compared to his side. But then it changed. And by the end, the store was just something we kept open for him, and the women working there for him were kind of taking care of him.
And so he, I think, directed all this energy into the business, all this mental energy that he had, and his intelligence went into the business, and he was very good at it. He knew what he was doing, and he could sense the trends and respond, and he was very successful at it.